pronounced it pretty good. Thanks, Matt. And I just wanted to welcome anyone who's new to church. And just because when I was new, well, I wasn't new, but there was a certain point in my life where I wish I was new. Because I was born and raised in a Christian family. I'll tell you a bit more about that. And I wish I was new and could walk into church and be greeted and make friends and start off fresh to get to know God and not just assume to know God. A lot of us, we live our lives going through Christianity, pretending that, we know what it's like to have a relationship with God, but really we don't. We just move through the motions. So I'll talk about that in a bit. I love talking to you guys, especially because you guys are an age group that I can relate to. And I had the most fun when I was in high school. And the older I get, the more I wish I was younger. And I'm sure you guys are the opposite. The younger you are, you want to get older. So don't wait too long. You'll be old enough. And you'll be standing up here maybe one day too, preaching to high school students. I was given the topic from Matt, and he was saying that we're talking about witnessing. So I had a lot of time to prepare. So I'm really excited to share what I call a burden. It's been sort of resting on my heart for quite a while now as I've been preparing and just sort of processing the information. So I'm really excited to get going. Once the slide's up, just let me know, guys. Awesome. So when I was young, when I was your age group, I was into hip-hop. I don't know if you guys know what it's like to wear baggy pants and baggy shirts, but that was me. So I would come into church and I would be judged right away because I was different, because I dressed different. And I kind of liked it too. I liked to stand out, and I was okay with being judged. But I know for some people it was a lot harder to just be different and to be accepted. So that was my sort of experience. Also, when I was your age group, that's when I got involved into cheerleading, okay? There was a picture there for a second of me when I was joined the Edmonton Eskimo cheer team. And I'm sure when I say that, a lot of you are sitting there, oh, that's funny, this guy was, a cheerleader, right? So you guys judged me, I'm sure you did, because you wouldn't be the only one. So I got used to it, and that was fine. I was born in Edmonton. That's another thing you could probably judge me for. Kelowna is much nicer, by the way. And I moved to Poland when I was a kid. And my parents decided to go there as missionaries. So I had no choice, but on the plane I go. And so my parents were always out working, teaching English, and my dad was a pastor in a church. And I went there as a kid with a very soft heart, okay? And thank you. Awesome. When I went to Poland, I had a very soft heart. I was afraid to hurt people. I had very good morals. I was a very proper kid. And I remember trying to transform into the way of being a Polish kid, which was completely different. And if you had a problem with somebody, the first thing they'd do is ask you, oh, you want to fight me? And I remember the first time I got into one of those experiences, I was scared to hurt the guy. And all my friends are standing around like, yeah, close your fist. You can do it, man. And I couldn't, so I stood there with my fists open, and I slapped the guy until he started crying, and he left. And I remember feeling so bad for even making him cry and leave. And also my cousin, he was quite the influence on me. He was a bit older. And he told me, he's like, Tim, if you want to fit in our group, you have to be one of us. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean to be one of you guys? He says, well, you have to steal something. I'm thinking to myself, I've never really stolen anything in my life. I remember seeing it on movies, right? It's quite simple, okay, whatever, I'll do that. Because I wanted to fit in, peer pressure. So I remember grabbing this grapefruit from a grapefruit stand and running as fast as I possibly could as they were watching me and laughing, because I guess that's not what you do. You gotta be more discreet about it and hide it in your pocket. And I remember they were sitting there eating this grapefruit. They're like, oh, you want some? I'm like, no, man. I felt so bad for stealing it that the next day I went back and I told my mom about it, and we paid for the grapefruit, and it was all good. But I just remember that transition of, hardening my heart, and it was getting to a point where I wasn't feeling bad to do things that I normally would have, and before I moved. So as my parents were working, of course, I was learning all about, the ways of the street, I guess you want to say, kind of blending in with my hip-hop group, running around spray painting graffiti and And doing all that, getting into trouble, I won't share everything, but that was me. And then I had the opportunity to come back to Canada. Well, I arrived 1 week before grade 10. And I can tell you, I was not prepared to come back to Canada. Everything was completely different here. People were different, the way that people would go out and have fun and watch movies, that was completely different. I was not accustomed to it. And I remember my brother taking me to the Bible bookstore. And so we walked in the store and we went, oh, this is cool. We didn't have one of these in Poland, right? And I remember grabbing a John Reuben CD off the shelf. And my little bad ways of, being in Poland, I'm like, I want this, but I don't have money for this. So I took that CD out of the case and slid it in my back pocket. And of course, not paying with it, I left the store. Not feeling bad, my conscience was diminished. I was at a point in my life where, I didn't feel bad or guilty for things like that. And I remember sitting in the car and crushing it. Not even getting to listen to it. It just broke. It snapped in half. And 5 years later, my brother is driving John Reuben around town, around Edmonton as a chauffeur. And he told him the story of when I stole a CD. And John Reuben signed me a CD and says, to your brother, so he doesn't have to steal another one. So it was kind of a nice thing of John Reuben to do. But that just gives you an idea of kind of the person I was before I came back. So the longer I was in Canada, the more I sort of started getting into a relationship with God, because I was lacking that in Poland. It was going to church, but really when I was attending church, I was just sitting there watching my dad preach, sort of through one ear out the other. And they say that this group of young adults, if you want to call it, or high school students, has a very short attention span. But I don't believe that. Because in my grade 10, I had no problem sitting in front of an Xbox playing some games for 7 hours straight. So what I've done is I've tried to make it as interesting as possible. And we're going to be touching on a very interesting topic today, which is on judgment. So we're going to get into that right away once I figure out how this clicker technology. There we go. So I titled it iJudge for basic reasons that we're very capable of judging others. And I hope that I am in a place and that all of you know you're in a place that no one judges anyone. We're all different. We all are unique. And this is the one place where we should feel very warm and accepted. So what I'm going to do is I brought you guys a present. Okay, so how many guest speakers bring presents? That's kind of different. Eh? So if I could get 2 people to come up here and help me pass them out. Go. Awesome, you got one. So just pass it out on that one side. Awesome. Okay, so when you're grabbing one of these rocks, okay, I challenge, if you want to challenge, take the large one. If you don't want to challenge, take a smaller one. One thing with judgment, guys, is that a lot of us don't like to be judged. I know I don't like to be judged, and you guys are from Kelowna, you know that when you walk down to the beach in the summer, it's really easy to be judged. And, there's a lot of people out there that try really hard to look great. And the other thing about judgment as Christians is that when we judge someone else, we hurt them. And we can hurt them for a very long time. So much so that I had an experience the other day with a guy who says, I'm not a Christian. And I said, well, why aren't you a Christian? He says, well, because I had a bad experience in church and somebody judged me. And so that's how powerful judgment can be. So we're going to talk about it because we don't want to be leading people away from God. We don't want to be the ones that are guilty for someone declaring that they're not a Christian. That's some serious stuff, guys. So if you guys are like me and you're driving down the street and somebody is in front of you and taking their time, typically I think to myself, man, if this guy only heard that song I work out, maybe he would move quicker, right? And I feel so bad afterwards, especially when my fiance corrects me and she says, you didn't just judge that person, did you? That was mean. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, that was kind of mean, right? So we do it not even thinking. It's so easy to judge. It's almost like, our natural skill, right?